Well, if you clicked on this video, then I assume that you have the goal of starting a side hustle, scaling it up, becoming financially free, breaking away from your 9 to 5, or probably working from any part of the world. Now, that is a great goal because that was the exact position that I was in 2 years ago. But the truth is, within the first couple of months that I started my first side hustle, which was an Amazon FBA business, it didn't really go out well. And so in this video, I'll be sharing 8 things that you need to know, 8 mistakes that you're likely to make, and how to, more importantly, avoid them, and then subsequently attain your goal of becoming financially free. In August 2023, that was when I started my first side hustle. And trust me, the very first few months was extremely daunting and extremely tiring. And the reason was simple. I went in there without a clear goal. And that is the first point I will be discussing here. If you start a side hustle without a clear goal or any mission or vision, it makes it twice as hard and it makes it twice as difficult for you to become successful. And the reason is simple. It is simply because you don't know where to go. You don't know when to stop. You don't know when to work, and nothing drives you. You have literally no sense of direction. The first thing that you need to consider when it comes to starting a side hustle is to have a goal or a vision, and you need to write that goal down. You need to make sure that that goal is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and of course time-bound. Anytime that you sit down to set goals in this manner, it gives you a system that would eventually make it easier for you to push yourself, to motivate yourself, more importantly, to track your progress, and then subsequently do anything necessary for you to reach your goal of becoming financially free. The second mistake that people tend to do when starting a side hustle is that they start a side hustle outside their interest. If you really want to go on and become successful, then you might as well start something that is within your scope of interest. So for example, if you like teaching, then you might find a side hustle that grants you the ability to exhibit those interests. And then if you're someone that is into sports or physical activities, then you might as well start a side hustle like a personal trainer or a physical trainer or anything in that regard. And the reason is simple. It becomes a little bit tiring if you start a side hustle that is outside your scope of competence and, more importantly, your interest, because you don't find any joy. Everything becomes more or less like your 9 to 5, which is what you're trying to actually escape. But the truth is, anytime you find yourself doing something that you already have any interest in, you tend to not stress out, in that everything becomes more or less like an enjoyable process for you. And that makes it easier for you to become successful with that side hustle that you want to start. For example, when I started my YouTube channel, I didn't even have any idea about video editing or scripting or researching and all that. Well, of course, I had a master's degree in business finance, and I had a little bit of exposure as a student representative council president. And so these interests really helped me, because I spoke to several people out there on campus. People would walk to you, you'd give speeches to hundreds of students and all that. You would sometimes be in the General Assembly to present the State of the Union address and all that. All those things helped me in starting this YouTube channel, because it's easier for me to consume and then produce here with whatever I have or whatever I have acquired through learning, listening to podcasts, or reading books. And that is much more easier because I find this interesting. There is more or less like an existing experience that aligns with this current YouTube channel or with this current process, or me having to record, edit, and then posting videos on YouTube. This brings us to the third point, which is instant gratification. So we tend to just put so much focus on how we can make X amount of money within the shortest possible time. One thing that you need to know is that side hustles take time. It takes time for you to realize profits. It takes time for you to realize some level of income. And it's not as easy as people tend to, purport online. You're likely to see so many people on, the internet coming out to say, you can make X amount of money within a month. I doubled X amount of money by doing A, B, and C. That is not the truth. Side hustles are likely to take time because of all these marketing schemes that are aimed at people that have the idea or the goal of becoming financially free. People tend to sell them dreams that are non-existent and then make several hundreds of millions off their backs. What you need to know is that the side hustle that you're willing to start might not necessarily even bring in any income over the next couple of weeks or probably even months. And that should be fine, because that is the time that you're searching for customers. That is the time that you're trying to portray what you're selling and the skill set that you have, or exhibiting any products that might be of interest or might deliver value to your customers. It takes time for you to do anything in life, and that is why you need to approach the side hustle with the patience and of course with the consistency, which would eventually lead to you realizing the goal of becoming financially free. This brings us to the fourth point, which is underestimating our initial cost. So when I started my side hustle, I first of all went to buy a course to learn how to source product, how to list on Amazon, how to prep the product, and more importantly, how to price them on Amazon's platform. The truth is, I didn't really know anything about Amazon fees. I didn't know anything about shipping cost. I didn't know anything about value added tax and all that all these are likely to eat up into my budget. I didn't really budget for it, to be very honest with you. And nobody actually gave me any heads up as to what I was really stepping into. And so I made the mistake of underestimating the cost that I was likely to incur in starting the side hustle. And that might be your situation. If you want to start a side hustle and become very successful, what you need to know is that you need to try as much as possible and get an expert advice as to how much it would cost you to initially start. And at this point, I wouldn't recommend you starting a JCurve business. And a JCurve business is a business that trades physical goods in exchange for money. I wouldn't recommend that for you if you're a starter. What you should know is that you need to trade a service in exchange for value or in exchange for money. That eventually would reduce your startup cost and then over the long run increase the returns that you make. Because if you're able to start with a minimal amount of money, then over the long run, any amount of the money that comes in is likely to become profit. However, if you start with so many fixed costs and so many variable costs from the onset, then you're likely to diminish your returns or your profits in the long run. Because anytime that you're willing to send products in or you're sourcing products and all that, you have to incur additional cost, which sometimes can set you back severally, and you might not be able to set yourself up after that. This brings us to the fifth point, which is time management. I know that most people out there feel like, a side hustle is something that they can just approach, casually, and that should be fine. But the truth is, you need to dedicate some level of time to your side hustle. And at this point, if you're not willing or able to contribute to your side hustle consistently, probably on a daily or sometimes practically on a weekly basis, then you're likely to lose out altogether. You need to try as much as possible and then allocate at least 4 hours per week for that side hustle, because that is what would eventually push you towards the attainment of your goal. So many people start side hustles and they don't even find the time to contribute to whatever they will actually want to see at the end of the day. And that is one of the biggest mistakes that you can ever make. You need to apportion some time, and of course, with the patience and the consistency, you would eventually realize your goal of becoming financially free. The sixth point is that people tend not to market their side hustle enough. And of course, at this point, if you really want to share a skill, for example, if it is on freelancing apps like Upwork or Fiverr, then what you can also do is that you can resort to, promotions, and you can resort to adverts, which would eventually lead you to making more sales or reaching so many people in the process. That also increases your chances of survival and your chances of selling. Of course, on Amazon, it's easier because there are promotional ads that will promote your product onto the first page. So anytime that there is a search, Amazon is likely to push your product to the first page, which increases your chances of actually earning a sale at the end of the day. But it's not easy, and that is not the case for most side hustles. In most side hustles, you have to personally promote your product or promote your services on several social media platforms. And so you need to also try as much as possible and then carve out a strategy as to how you'd meet people, how do you promote your product online, and how do you pitch to people and then increase your chances of becoming successful altogether. Because visibility equals sales, or visibility equals success when it comes to your side hustle. This brings us to the seventh point, which is some knowledge on business. And, at this point, people tend to, shy away from the side hustle altogether when I tell them this, that you need to have some level of business exposure. or business knowledge when it comes to starting a side hustle. You need to be able to calculate your taxes. You need to be able to approach people. You need to be exposed to some level of marketing or promotional ads, or how to run ads, how to pitch or how to sell to people, if it is the provision of a sales service or anything of that manner. What you need to know is that you need to educate yourself on what you want to do. It's not as easy as it sounds or as people try to purport on social media. Education is key. Educate yourself on business systems, on how to become successful, how to build the most reliable, the most efficient, and the most effective systems that would eventually see the success of your side hustle. There are several podcasts out there. There are several books out there. The E-Myth Mystery is a book that I have here currently, and you can get that book. It tells you, it teaches you so much about entrepreneurship. These are things that you may likely have to do in order for you to realize the success that you're hoping for in starting and subsequently scaling your side hustle. Lastly, people tend to give up too easily. And the truth is, sometimes it's very easy for you to find the motivation, for you to push yourself through the very first few weeks or through the very first few months, or probably even the first year. But trust me, most businesses are likely to see the greatest tempest in these moments. And that is why there is a need for you to prepare for the most unfortunate circumstances. And more importantly, stick around and stay consistent to your goal of becoming financially free. Now, one thing that you can do in order for you to stay motivated is to have a habit tracker. So in my case, for example, for this YouTube channel, I have a habit tracker here, and I call it the 100th shot. Currently, I've recorded 21 videos. Well, this is the 22nd video. And so anytime that I finish a video, I shade a box here. So I know that I'm currently 22% through with my goal of shooting and then editing and posting 100 videos at the end of the year 2025. So that helps me. It makes it much more easier for me to track my progress, and more importantly, to stay consistent. Because without shooting, editing, and posting that 100 videos, there's no way I'm quitting. And I've shared this goal with several friends and family, and so they hold me accountable. There is a need for you to share the goal of starting, scaling, and becoming financially free through your side hustle, because that would eventually lead to people holding you accountable, urging you on, motivating you, and pushing you a step towards the attainment of your financial freedom goal. Thank you.